This is Cameron from 919A, and I'm going to be talking about some initial strategies and mechanisms that I've came up with for this new design, for this new tournament this year. So in front of me, I have the field for this year's competition. This year's competition is called Tower Takedown, and I'm going to be going over some really quick scoring ways you can score and strategies in the first part of this. So ways you can score are via these buckets that you see here that are elevated, and the zones that you see with the alliance colors on them. And what you're trying to do is take the cubes that are on the field and put them inside of the zones. And the more you have in there, each of them is worth 1 point by themselves. But once you stack a cube in one of these buckets, it increases the point value by 1 point. And these two buckets right here are specific to your alliance color, while these five right here, they're neutral and they could be descored and rescored anytime that you want. So starting off this competition, I figured out that a vertical roller intake kind of system with a conveyor would be really helpful for stacking like 5 or 6 on top of each other and putting them in the zone at once. So here are some mechanisms that I came up with. So starting off, double reverse 4-bar, which is kind of standard now through all these competitions because of how easy it is to build first of all, and how reliable and fast you can make it. So yeah, that's this right here, and it's going to be a 1 to 3 with 200 RPM driving it on the motor. And then so a sub component of this double reverse 4-bar is a arm. It's an arm that brings up the cubes from a horizontal position to a vertical position. The horizontal position is ideal for picking them off the ground, because when you're picking them up, you don't want to have gravity as a kind of stopping you, limiting you from picking them up, and putting strain on your motors when you're trying to pick it up. So it'll be horizontal and it'll be just sliding onto it. And then you have these rollers right here that aid it in going into it. This plexiglass kind of thing right here, it doesn't have to be plexiglass necessarily, but just for smoothness of going inside, it'll be plexiglass. And basically what it's going to do is take a cube, and then that one cube is going to be rested right here while it pushes back the other cubes that you intake. And this plexiglass tower, I figured out 6 cube capacity would be ideal, because later on in the season, of course, there are going to be a lot of robots that are able to score more points via these zones than by just simply descoring the opponent's cubes, because the zones are kind of a permanent score, because the robot's not allowed to come inside of these. They're not allowed to breach the zone, especially when you're placing cubes down. It's not like any of these other seasons where there's a lot of defense and they could just kind of knock out what you're working on. You could just place it in there stress free. So going back to, or actually starting off with, kind of the base of this robot is very important for this year, because you want it to be maneuverable first of all, so you can grab like these cubes in the hard to reach places, and also you want it to be able to climb over this kind of like bump right here, so that you could place the cubes properly without them tipping. And to do that, I came up with a very similar design to a lot of the ones used this year to climb on top of the center platform, which is a smaller wheel behind the front wheel, and the front wheel is not guarded by anything in the front. The front is completely open, so this will be in direct contact with the bump right here, and you'll be able to climb it. And the second wheel is not for the initial climb, but for backing out after you've placed your cubes, and this wheel will kind of roll over the bump instead of having your robot kind of tilted and stuck on the C channel on the point of the bump, because the bump is not a ramp on 2 ways, it's only a ramp 1 way, kind of like that right there. You guys can see that. So basically, yeah, that's about it. And for the chassis, it's going to be 200 RPM 1-to-1 4 motor, like a lot of robots this year, because I don't think speed is that big of a factor compared to stacking capability and how fast you can score on top of the buckets. Also, this design is ideal, like the one that rolls them in is ideal, because for the buckets at the top, all you need is 1 cube, so you can have just a couple of cubes lined up here, and while you're placing them down, you can just go from 1-to-1 bucket, just dropping down cubes of the same color or different color, doesn't matter. And that brings me to the strategy. I was saying cubes of 1 color because I think that's the best strategy for this year. Just initially though, it's probably going to change over the season. So I think this is the best strategy because the cube's value is higher based on the amount of ones in the buckets. And I think that that's going to be really important throughout the season because even when you start off the match, your preloads are of one color that's different than your opponent's. So if you think that you scoring one cube is going to make your opponent score the same cube that you're scoring so they could gain the point value, you're going to have a slight advantage with your specifically colored cubes. So basically I'm saying that if you're a blue alliance, you go for just green cubes, and if you're a red alliance, you go for just orange cubes. And this is really important because with the amount of buckets that there are, you can potentially score, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You could score 6 extra points for each cube that you put in there, and that far outweighs even like the most efficient stacking robot from the opponent's side. So those are my initial opinions and thoughts on this new game. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and please leave comments if you guys disagree with anything I said.